Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm your host, Brody Welch, and this episode is for you if you're curious why you can't just move through the world all the time like the most highly evolved version of yourself. Like, why can't we respond to every situation with kindness and patience as we might intend when we wake up in the morning and align with that highest vibration and tap into gratitude? I'd say that for any of us concerned with personal growth and evolution, we're always looking for ways to not get triggered and contract and react to the world. So with me today is an expert on helping people with simple psychology and grounded spirituality really understands more about who we are and how to get unstuck and improve our relationships. Michelle Chalfant is a therapist, holistic life coach, author, podcaster, and motivational speaker. And today we're going to be talking about a model that she has developed called the Adult Chair. She hosts a podcast by the same name, The Adult Chair, where she talks about ways in which we can put this model to use in our daily life. And she has over 25 years of experience in all areas of self-healing, which you can learn more about at theadultchair.com. Michelle Chalfant, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Thanks, Brody. I am delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's get into what the Adult Chair is.
And I have to answer it in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah,
I can do that. Here's my little elevator speech. It's a manual for life to make it really short and sweet and simple.
Great. And why should we read this manual for life?
You need to read this, Brody, because it really teaches us, just like you said in the intro, I realized in my own life, I grew up feeling not good enough, damaged, broken, not lovable, all of these things. But you would have never guessed if you saw me on the outside. I had a boyfriend, I knew how to dress. I had a friend group, all of that. But on the inside, I was really suffering. And I started this quest probably when I was a teenager. And it lasted over 25 years. And I don't think I'll ever stop, to be honest with you. I'm just a seeker in that way. But I was looking for ways that I really was looking for the manual on how to love myself, because I thought to myself in my early 20s, the way I talk to myself, it's really not good. It must mean that I hate myself. So I couldn't find that manual. So the Adult Chair is really a culmination of 25 years of books that I read, lectures, mentors, classes, certifications, all of it, all boiled into one model. And that model is called the Adult Chair. And with this Adult Chair model, you can plug it into just about anything in your life. And it provides really a touchstone for what a healthy adult looks like, feels like. How does a healthy adult show up in the world? And what I have found is that most humans, we physically look like we're adults, but on the emotional and mental side of things, we are much more adolescents, meaning we show up, we are reactive. We are not in the present moment. We live with story and assumption. We don't know anything about boundaries, or we don't know how to set them. We live with, the list can go on and on. Codependency, perfectionism, people pleasing. These are structures that the ego kind of creates in order for us to survive. But if we had a really healthy adult, we'd be able to see these things and identify them and then know what to do with them. So in the Adult Chair, that's what I teach. It's a very, very simple model. And it provides it's a blend of simple psychology and grounded spirituality. So it's an easy model that anyone can plug into. I hope that kind of narrows it down.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And we're
Yeah.
going to dive more deeply into it clearly in this time that we have together. I'm sure that there's a lot of people listening who can relate to that not enoughness story. I know I sure can, and that sense of either I'm not enough or I'm not doing enough. There's sort of a yin and a yang of it, right? That either there's like, I'm not adequate or the things that I'm doing are not enough. That is a story I hear time and time again from clients and patients. And as you very accurately point out, we create these ego structures to feel like we can navigate the world. And these are shapes that are not the shape of the true self. They're shapes that we contract into, like being the people pleaser or being perfect or being the achiever or whatever labels we want to give it. There are these shapes that we take on that aren't really who we are and that limit the possibilities of our being. And frankly, that it makes life more stressful because then we're having to
It
defend
totally does.
against that ego shape.
Right.
So what there is this the adult chair implies that there are other chairs. Can you tell us a little
Yes.
bit about those other chairs and why we get you mentioned the adolescent. What knocks us from our adult to our adolescent?
Mm.
And you said when we're in story and assumption. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So the whole model is based on three developmental stages of our lives. And I've broken the three developmental stages into three chairs. So we've got the child chair, and most people know the child or the inner child. That exists from the age of about 0 to 6. So in that chair is where we learn about true emotions, true feelings, spontaneity, vulnerability, intimacy. So, again, 0 to 6 years old, this is what little kids are learning about fun, creativity, all of that. From the age of 6 to about 24, 25, we go from pre adolescence, adolescence to post adolescence. This is also the development of the ego. So, the ego is coming online. And the ego, again, its job is to keep us alive. It's the seat of the survivor. So, in order to do that, it bases our reality or our identity on outside circumstances. So, let me become who I think you want me to be. So, who does my mom want me to be? Who does my dad? Who does my grandparent? Who does my teacher, my coach, my friends? Who do they want me to be? And the ego says, okay, that's who I need to become in order to be lovable, seen, and heard. So we morph ourselves. We become someone that we are not. That's all the developmental stages of the adolescent part of who we are. And then if we had healthy adult role models in our lives, then around the age of 25, when that prefrontal cortex comes online, around 25 years old, we quite naturally shift into what I would call the healthy adult or into our adult chair. Again, most of us don't have. We have parents that might even love us, but did those parents teach you how to navigate your emotions? Did they sit with you and say, hey, Brody, what are you feeling today? Talk to me about that sadness. I'm just going to be with you in it. Did they teach you boundaries? Did you have healthy boundaries? So most of us don't land in this adult chair. So again, we grow physically up, but from that emotional, mental perspective, we get very stuck in this adolescent phase of our lives. And by the way, that part is around the average age of a 12 to 14-year-old kid. So even though you might be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, we navigate from this very younger part of who we are. And in the adolescent is again where we are reacting, where we are living in past and future. All of we're not present moment. When we're in our adult, we're present moment. We're observing our thoughts. We respond versus react. We set healthy boundaries. And if we don't know how, we learn how. We gather information instead of creating a story or an assumption around things. So that's pretty much what happens in these three chairs. So what happens is throughout the day, we're shifting chairs. So we might be having some really strong emotions. We're in the child. We might feel really like we have some strong needs, like I need a hug or I need someone to tell me that they love me. That's the child. The adolescent, again, very reactive, living in the control, a control freak would be in their adolescent, perfectionist, all this kind of thing. A narcissist would be their codependency. And the adult is not Zen. I really want to be clear. When I'm in my adult chair, I'm not this, in my Zen state doing yoga all day. It's empowered. I can raise my voice and set a heck of a boundary. I'm clear. I know who I am. I know what I want. I'm going to speak up for it. So that's what the adult is all about. And I recognize when I'm stepping into my codependency and I observe it and then I choose again. So I have a lot more choices when I'm in my adult. And it's again the seat of consciousness versus the adolescent is the seat of unconsciousness.
It makes a lot of sense that there's a part of ourselves that when we need to feel safe that we get defensive and we go to this younger version of ourselves, especially when we haven't been given the skills and tools that we need to stay as fully as evolved as we are and as adults. And you mentioned or you hinted at a couple of things that help us stay adult. One of the things I know is, well, the ability to witness what's going on with some
Mm-hmm.
degree of neutrality without getting hooked by it, and the ability to feel what's coming up so that you know what the right action is in the moment.
Yes.
What are the other components? So to me that's like we need to be able to see a situation for what it is and we need to understand how we're feeling. Those that seem like two prerequisites. What else is there?
Yeah, and what comes up when you say that for me is, we need to own our reality. That's very much being an adult. So you had mentioned, if we get hooked or react or get triggered, let's say,
Mhm.
we have to own it and recognize, wow, wait a minute, I'm being triggered. Hold on, what's going on? And then we slow down. So when we're in our adult, we're able to recognize what's going on instead of getting lost in it. There's that seat of the observer that happens in the adult chair that we don't have in the adolescent. In the adolescent, I'm going down the drain. I'm lost. I don't know what's happening. I'm in anger. I'm reacting all over the place. But the adult is able to maybe have that happen. And then we pop out of it and go, oh, hold on. I just shifted chairs. And I think that this is why people really like this because it's very visual. Most of us are visual, some are not. But even if you're not a visual person, we all get that we become someone else when we are triggered and we are in a reactionary state. So when we're in our adult, we catch these things and then we own it. We're able to apologize. I'm able to bring myself back in the moment. Just this morning, I was really stressed. I have so much going on today with work. I have a lot of podcasts to do. I have a lot of writing to do. I have a lot of meetings in between. I hardly had a break. And I started thinking about my day when I was first thing in the morning, which again, that's not being an adult. That's in my adolescent thinking in the future. And I felt all this anxiety start to amp up inside of me, which is again, adolescent chair. And I was able to say, wait a minute, Michelle, hold on. Let me slow down. And there's a tool that I love that's in the adult chair. I think I got this one from Donna Eden, if you know her, the energy medicine person. And you take one hand and you put it on your forehead, and you take your other hand, you put it on that occipital ridge on the back of your head. And I took some very slow, deep breaths. I brought myself back to present and I was in peace again. It took about 30 seconds to a minute at the most. So in our adult, we're able to do that. We recognize where we are and then what we need to do to get ourselves back to present. Does that help? Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like the first step is recognizing, okay, I've been triggered.
Yeah.
Something's going on here that is and by the way, as you say the adult chair, I'm imagining these versions of me driving the bus, right? Like
Yes.
they're the ones at the
Yes.
controls steering and maybe going off the road because they can't see very well because they're 12 or 5 and they don't really know what they're doing. But being able to recognize what's going on allows us to take responsibility for it. But before even after the recognized step, it seems like your next step was to calm your nervous system, is to
Hmm.
recognize that we can't when we're stressed out, we don't really have a choice except to operate on autopilot. And
Right.
to that in order to be able to be fully conscious, to be literally in the prefrontal cortex and to be able to respond instead of react, it is imperative that we can self-regulate and the breath is, as everyone who listens to the show knows, the fastest way to calm the nervous system. And
Yes.
that is a great way of giving the reins or the steering wheel back to your adults and being able to take a pause and figure out like, okay, what just happened? And like if we were to follow this through, if you were to recognize, okay, yeah, I'm anxious because I've got all this stuff to do today and I really care about it and I want to do a good job. And maybe I'm totally not going to psychoanalyze what was going on for you, but like maybe there's some legitimate concern in there.
Hmm.
Is there a place? Do you have to be Do you have to be able to fully calm yourself down to be in your adult?
Are you saying that, like, if I'm stressed about something,
Yep.
how do I handle it from my adult?
Well, just basically acknowledging that, okay, yes, I am anxious and I'm
Mhm.
anxious for these good reasons that are,
Mhm.
then is that enough to get us back
Yeah.
to being in our adult chair?
Yes. The adult is all about awareness.
Okay.
And again, I find that when I'm not me, but everybody, when we're in our adolescent chair, that unconscious state is, it's like we're going through life with our eyes closed. And when you're in your adult, it's opening the eyes and saying, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? So if I do feel anxious, I know from my adult to slow down. I know what to do. I know how to regulate my nervous system. I know, and in the adult chair, what I say is anxiety is the physical manifestation of unfelt emotions. So I know that I need to slow down and feel something that's bubbling around inside. So I'm going to take a moment and do that. So it's not to say that you won't feel anxiety, but when I feel the anxiety, I'm going to know what to do with it. It's not to say you won't get stressed, but while I'm stressed, I know what to do. It's really fascinating just to have the idea of the chairs. I remember one time, I was probably about 10 years ago. I I was stressed about something with my kids. Oh, I remember it was something had happened. I was picking my kids up from school, and I, again, this is in the unconscious state. This is how most of us live. I picked them up from school. I thought everything was fine. Drove them all the way home, 20 minutes in the car, chit-chatting with my children. Got home, walked in the house. They all dropped their bags. I don't know what my kids did, but I walked directly in the kitchen, directly into the pantry, and started standing in the pantry. I had a big walk-in pantry at the time. And I started just eating potato chips one after the next. And I literally said to myself, what chair am I in? And when I said that statement, it snapped me out. It was like, boom, I'm out of it. It was like I came out of a dream
Yes.
state. And I'm like, what? It
Right.
was almost like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you doing, Michelle? And I said, what chair? I can still see this like it was like an hour ago. And I said, Michelle, what chair are you in? And when I said that, I had a chip coming midstream, like up to my mouth. And I
Yeah.
said, oh my God, I'm in my adolescent chair. And when I said that, this was fascinating. I have to say, the craving for the chips went away 100%. I took the chip bag, rolled it up, put the clip on it, put it back in there. And I went over and sat down at the kitchen table and I said, okay. Then I was in my adult and it's like all this new awareness. And I said, what the heck happened? What's going on? And I sat down and I said, what caused me to do that? And I went back in time. And what I'd missed was the way this certain mom, when I had walked in to get my kids from school, some mom said something to me. I can't even remember what it was. It was so whatever, way back when. And it kind of ticked me off. I remember it ticked me off and it kind of hurt my feelings what she said. But I had my kids and all the kids were running around and I grabbed my kids and okay, let's go. And I didn't give it a second thought. But guess what? It was still in my mind. It was on my mind. So it was in that unconscious part of me. And that part of me was causing me to eat. So it's like, bam, that awareness just wakes you up completely. And then you have tools and you can work through just about anything.
I love that example because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to it, and that, yeah, being able to recognize, okay, yeah, like I don't need to be doing this. What am I doing and why am I
Right.
doing it? What, and just the fact that is it any wonder that anxiety is the number one mental health concern at this point when the world is moving so fast. And in order to really understand, if you're saying that anxiety is related to unfelt emotions and
Hmm.
unprocessed stuff from life, and we don't ever make space to slow down and intentionally give space for those emotions and those thoughts to come up and to be noticed and felt and let go of, that there's going to be this backlog and that's propelling potentially behaviors that are not necessarily in our best interest.
100%. And we think, well, I'm not sad anymore. I'm not angry anymore. So thank God I'm beyond that. It's like, no, all that you've done is had a glass of wine or had a chocolate cake or a cookie or numbed out on Netflix. And that energy of that emotion is still in your energy field and it will rise back up unless you work through it and process it. And that, by the way, is not a long process.
Right, 90 seconds, right, is the
90
lifespan of
seconds.
emotions. Yeah, and
Yes.
so if we have 90 seconds,
Hmm.
it's like, all right, Michelle, what do you mean by feel an emotion? My patients ask me this all the time because I'm forever writing down on self-care prescription pads, things like time and space to process and feel. And so,
Yes.
but for a lot of people, especially if we haven't had role models or training about this, just like we don't know how to breathe or eat or move from a young age, a lot of us are given exactly the wrong messages about how to deal with emotions. It's like we're not allowed to have them or experience them unless they're either, but unless they're socially acceptable for whatever reason. So if people don't have a whole lot of experience of giving themselves permission to feel or to move through something, what advice do you give your people?
Yes, I get asked this question all the time. It's a great question. Because again, if our parents and grandparents and whoever raised us didn't know what to do with their emotions, how in the world are we supposed to know? And we're not. Like, it's something you have to learn.
And we're not
So,
failures for not already
no,
knowing it, right?
no, not in the least bit. It's like, give yourself grace. You weren't taught. It's like saying, why don't you know calculus? What's wrong with you? And it's like,
Right.
I didn't take it in high
Right.
school. How in the
Exactly.
world am I supposed to know it? So it's like, who cares? And I say that a lot from the adult, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's like, who cares? We have to say that to ourselves a lot more. Let it go. Give yourself grace. But from our adult, I am going to learn how to do it. So here's how you feel emotions. Slow down, take some deep breaths, get curious about what it might be that's going on inside. I love journaling. And I love journaling. Journaling for me, I mean, the pen is the gateway into our unconscious mind, into the body. And that's where everything's stored. That's where all these emotions are swirling around. So it's like, okay, let's get in touch with what's going on there. So you can just journal. I've got a great, and people go, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write. I've got free journal. I created free journaling prompts for people because they were so stuck with journaling. That's at theadultchair.com/14 days. It's just 4 days. If anyone wants to learn how to journal, it's a fabulous way to learn how to journal. But journaling gets that flow state going, gets the energy going, gets the emotions going. But if you want to do it in 90 seconds, here's the thing. You don't have to know what the emotion is. Can you just tune into what's the physical feeling in the body? I have done this work for over 25 years. I've never sat with a client that this did not work for. So when you are feeling or experiencing something and you can't put a label on the emotion, like it's fear, it's I'm not worthy, whatever it is, sit in your body, just get in your body, tune into the body. I'll say to my clients, go ahead and just imagine that you're going through like an MRI machine and there's a scan. What slight tension or contraction in the body do you feel? And when you find it, people might say, well, I feel like a teeny, teeny, tiny bit of tension in my stomach. Great. Focus on it. Don't do anything with it. Just allow it to be there, but do give it attention. And what happens is that energy in the body or that tension is going to start to morph. It's going to change. It might get more intense. Let it be intense. It might get less. Let it be less. But what I have found is when you sit with it and be with it, it eventually morphs and goes away. And you don't need to know what it is, if it's sadness or shame or whatever. And by the way, if you feel like crying, people say all the time, I'm sure you've experienced this. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm crying. No, don't be sorry.
Right.
Let it out. It's another way to process without labeling it. You don't have to label the emotions if
No,
you
it's
can't.
just a pathway out for emotion.
Exactly.
And
Let
in
it go.
in Chinese medicine, emotions are qi, right? It's energy and it needs to move, it needs to flow. It's only pathology when it gets stuck, like a stagnant pond instead of the flowing river. And in Chinese medicine, we do different kinds of energy tends to move in different ways, right? Anger tends to move up and out so that we can stand up for ourselves or be assertive, right? Grief tends to move down and in and feel heavy, right? The emotions have distinct signatures and organ systems that they're said to target. But that said, emotions can also transform into other emotions when unexpressed. And so it's not like you have to go looking for the stuck anger from 20 years ago. It's likely changed into something else now, or like it may be something that doesn't necessarily resemble the reaction you once had, but being able to access like essentially that body scan exercise that you're just describing. Yeah, like I encourage my clients to go through that first as their energy body, right? The field, or including the field around us that extends, a good foot past the borders of our physical body. So scanning that prana maya kosha, or that auric field, or that bioelectric human biofield, also scanning the physical body, also scanning for whatever's going on in the minds and whatever's going on in the emotions. And that this is, in a sense, a qigong practice of inner gazing, where we're able to notice, it may be colors, it may be sensations, it may be just a sense of something that is dense, or it just that there's lots of ways that this can manifest, but tuning into that and allowing it, just paying attention without any particular doing. A lot of times, as you're saying, it will move, and it will move far more quickly and out, rather than if we can actually make it stick around longer by assigning a story to it and attaching, like, oh, letting it reinforce a younger part of our identity. Would
So
you agree?
true.
Yeah, okay, I was
Mm.
gonna say, would you agree with that?
No,
Yeah.
100%. No, I definitely agree. And also, just to remind people, and you've probably talked about this in the past, but if that energy gets tighter in the body or more intense, it's okay. It doesn't mean anything. Like, don't assign meaning to it. Don't create a
Yeah.
story. Just let it be there. Let it have its moment. And then poof, it moves through
Mhm.
every single
Yeah.
time.
It also can be the kind of thing where to lean into the discomfort, right? To you can actually bring more energy and awareness to that area.
Hmm.
After something contracts, it has to relax. It's the yin and yang of life. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there's lots of ways of playing with what we notice, but the noticing and allowing are the key components, I would say, in this particular
Yeah. And but
practice.
you had said something that I think is really important. I just did an IGTV on this. I was talking about grief. And people said, I have so much grief. And what you said, I did the whole IGTV on, which is stories create stuck emotion. So you'll have an emotion, like, for example, I was talking about grief, and people said, I can't let go of my grief. And I said, well, I'll say to people, well, what are you thinking about? What story you're creating around that grief? And again, it's not that it's not true that because my father died, my children are not going to have a grandfather. They're going to miss out on learning how to sail, on learning how to ski, on learning how to do all these beautiful things because my father's not here to teach them. My life is going to be much different because my father's not going to be here. But when we create that story around any emotion, like how terrible it is and how things are going to be so different, we get stuck in the story. That's when emotions get stuck. If we can drop the story and just simply feel the emotion, it does go right through your body and process through in 90 seconds. We have to give it the space and drop the story.
So that all sounds pretty doable to me, like in terms of after the fact, the moment is gone. We've been able to, we've come back to our adult self. We are able to recognize what happened. We're able to bring awareness. We can feel the feeling. We can feel whatever it is, and we can move on. What is going to stop us from, if we've got a story that we know is outdated and old, that we're trying to break up with? But it keeps coming up. It keeps surfacing, and I'm wondering how we can get more proactive when we have identified what that story is. Like, okay, well, I that and feel free to provide us an example if one comes to mind.
Mhm. So how do you, what I call story bust? That's I just call it story busting, and
Yeah,
we
great.
have to be really aware of when that story begins because again, awareness is adult, unawareness is adolescent. So when we realize, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this thing for 10 minutes, that means you've been sitting in your Allison chair for 10 minutes in the unconscious state. So we want to bring awareness in to bust that story. The other thing that I say is dragging around a story is like dragging around a cement suitcase. So you have to make the decision. Do I want to carry this suitcase around? I'm very visual. Can you tell with what I do in my
Mhm.
work? So but something that I offer is, so those are the first two visuals. Like you've got to make sure you're shifting chairs. So if I'm stuck in story, I advise people to like stand up, change your state physically, and then emotionally, you can change your state by putting on music, jumping up and down, thinking about other thoughts, meditate, all of those things. But something that I think is really important is if you want to really change that story and you're stuck in it, you have to have a go-to thought. So, for example, I was working with this guy He was so upset because his girlfriend had cheated on him, and he couldn't get over the whole thought of when she told him that she had cheated on him. And he just kept going on instant replay over and over and over again. And I said, okay, you have to come up with your go-to thought, because we need to redirect and repro or the neural pathways in the brain. We're going right back to that old story. You are looping. So we need a new story, or we need a new something for your brain to go to, that go-to thought. So I said, tell me something that brings you so much joy, and something that is going to that brought you happiness in your past. And he started talking about his father that had taken him camping. He lived in Colorado, and he loved it. He talked about fishing and all these lovely things. And he was telling me first about his girlfriend. He was so angry and sad and hurt. Then he started talking about his father. Oh, he went on and on and on. And I said, can you summarize that story like in one sentence? And can you summarize that whole video that you're playing in your mind into the best scene that you ever had with your dad? And he says, oh yeah, it was this one time we were fishing, blah, 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 blah. I said, great. That's where I want you to go. When you engage in that story, I want you to go be with your dad fishing in Colorado in that river, da, 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 da. So you have to have that. You have to consciously redirect your thought. So that's how you can break that story. Cause he kept saying, I want to drop that suitcase. I don't want to carry it around. I'm like, well, we got to do a few more things. So that was what I had offered him. I think that's a really important part of dropping a story or busting a story.
I completely agree. I think that's it, that idea that if we've been perpetuating a story and basically digging that groove in our brains, like we've been establishing, dedicating a lot of chi and blood to this particular past pattern of thought that may not necessarily go away, but we can certainly build a new road. We can certainly use every opportunity when that comes up to be dedicating resources to a new thought pathway that we then reinforce until that becomes the new way that we get from point A to point B.
For sure. We need it.
Yeah, we
Otherwise,
do.
the brain doesn't know where to go. It's like,
Exactly.
okay, well, I
Exactly.
don't, and we go into what I call this like ping pong game back and
Mhm.
forth in the brain. It's like, well, I don't want to have that thought, but I'm having that thought and I don't know how to drop that thought. And I don't know. And I keep imagining my girlfriend's cheating on me. And it's this back and forth, back and forth. You've got to break it. And the other thing again is part two to that would be, have you felt the emotions truly around what happened? And feeling them again without the story is really powerful. That's how we break the rumination of thought, getting again in touch with the emotions and really allowing them to process through. And then again, finding the new truth. Okay, so now that my girlfriend cheated on me, now what's true? What's true for me in this relationship? Well, do you want to stay or not stay? And this is in the adult chair, we live in fact and truth. And with this guy, I said, what do you want to do? I want to stay with her. Okay, so feel that so much of our work has to be done what I call chin down versus chin up. And we try to fix our lives and heal our lives and transform chin up. The body has to be involved and engaged, or we will not transform anything. You've got to feel it in the body, whether it's an emotion or a new belief you want to put in or anything at all, which I know that you would agree because you're a body person.
Absolutely. Exactly. 100%. That this
Yeah.
is why I believe having a personal practice of body scanning, of yoga, of qigong, a
Mhm.
body-centered meditation practice is can be totally game changing. Of course, mindfulness is a wonderful tool in helping us recognize when we're triggered, right? Like essentially meditation is like the lock breaker for any habit, right? This
Mhm.
awareness muscle that we get to strengthen, but that being able to practice tuning into the body itself and to recognize that the body has wisdom and is actually inseparable from the mind, and that is not something that is just allowing us to have a mind and a sense of self, right? That what we do to our bodies, from how we fuel them to how much rest we give them to how much movement we give them, these things that I consider the essential core habits of self-care, that we need to have that in order to be healthy, in order for us to set ourselves up for the being in a position to recognize and not get stuck in the past.
Yeah. The other thing that I would add, and all of those I totally agree with, When I was in Nashville, and I had a private practice there, I had a girl down the hall that I just loved, and I referred probably a third of my clients to her. She did John Barnes myofascial
Mhm.
release. It was phenomenal, and I was amazed. And I started going to her weekly. That was part of my self care, even if I didn't have anything like emotionally to work on. But with a John Barnes trained practitioner, they're able to go in and intuitively know where to go. Because what happens is when we have a trauma or an old memory, it's stored in the fascia. So to have
Yeah.
somebody physically put your hands on that and move it out, oh my God, like people
Oh,
that were stuck in anxiety and all these other things, Diana would go in and she would help me to get them unstuck.
yeah.
So I would do a lot of the experiential work in my practice, refer them to her, and they'd bounce back and forth. Oh my gosh, people healed so much faster having that work done too. So
It's worth, yes,
the body is so important.
worth noting that most acupuncture points are in the fascia. And
Yes.
this is where that every point is like a portal of consciousness and has a very particular job. And specifically anyway, there's I was also trained in John Barnes method myofascial work back when I
Mm,
was a massage therapist before getting into Chinese medicine. And
hmm.
so there is really, yeah, there really is something about being touched about it, and whether that person is a massage therapist or a Chinese medicine practitioner or a body worker of whatever stripe, that helping you connect with it, it's really more like a guided tour from the inside out, right? Rather than somebody
So
doing
true.
something to you. It's more like an invitation, but also having your energy and physicality moved in a skillful way such that we can let go, because trauma lives in the tissue, and whether that's emotional or physical, that's part of how we recover, right? Is restoring
Yeah.
restoring normal function, whether
Yep.
that physically or emotionally.
And the other person that I referred to in Nashville all the time
Yeah.
was this really great acupuncturist. So yeah, I agree. I mean, what you're doing is really, really, really important for sure.
Wouldn't it
For
be
sure.
cool if we had if just nationwide therapists and body workers had this sort of
Yes.
like deeper connections? I would love to see little nodes in every community where we could really support people without everyone having to know everything, right?
I
Everyone can
agree. And I think I wish that more people would refer out because
absolutely.
I can't, I mean, I can work with everybody, but if someone's stuck, I'm going to refer them out in a heartbeat. My job is to make sure that everyone that I meet with, of course, is going to heal and transform. That's my goal. That's what it's all about. And anyway, I could go off on a whole
Yeah,
other tangent here, but it's so important that we work together.
absolutely.
I mean, sometimes I would tell my clients, hey, you need to go to yoga. You need to practice breath work. You need, go meet with this person, with that person. We have to consider all that's out there because we need a lot of help. Being human can
Yes.
be hard, as you know.
Well, yeah, and the fact that it takes maintenance, right? So that health
Yes.
health takes maintenance in order for our ecosystem to be in balance. It doesn't happen magically. It's something that we need to tend to on a regular basis, just as we would tend to garden.
Yes.
We were chatting a little briefly about before pressing record on this interview about how so many of our clients are experiencing like overwhelm and stress around relationships with the world at large, that
Mm.
like beyond just the immediacy that we might be feeling in our personal relationships or our professional relationships, but things that are happening on this bigger global or national scale, with things like the election and the two sets of facts that people are operating under, and the racial polarization, and as well as the drive for racial justice, and things that are going on, COVID and climate change, and all these big issues that have a profound impact on everyone, that feels like a bit much at times.
Yes, it does.
And I've been likening it to being like a toxin in our ecosystem that we all have to be making time and space to filter out, and to figure out what to do with it. How are you helping people with this?
Mm. It's a question I've been asked, like I said, so much lately, from the beginning of COVID till now. And this is what I say to all of it. The most important thing we can do for ourselves is to stay connected to ourselves. That's it. So the question is, What is disconnecting you from self? What is pulling you out of your adult chair? I've had some people that I've worked with in our membership say, I'm so upset because I posted this blah, blah, blah on Facebook and I didn't mean anything by it. And people attacked me on Facebook. I'm like, get off of social media. Why are you posting anything about the election? And why are you posting? We have to learn for ourselves because some people can post, they can get negative feedback on their post and they don't really care and they brush it off, move on. If it bothers you, then stop it. If you watch the news and you feel anxious when you're done, then stop watching the news. If you're allowing people that are coming over talk about who they voted for, who they're not voting for, COVID, and it's bringing up anxiety for you, then set a boundary and say, hey, we're not going to talk about this here, but I really want to share with you what's going on with my family or my job or whatever else. But we have to become radical or have radical self-care. We have to do that for ourselves because no one's going to do it for us. I realized that. I remember way back in March when all the COVID started coming out, all the news and stock market's going out, like all of this. And I love the stock market. And I was watching it and I was watching what's going on with COVID. And I was getting so anxious. I lived with anxiety probably the first half of my life. So I know what it's like. And then I've done a lot of my work, didn't have it anymore. And it started coming back. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing? I understand that there's a lot going on in our world and it affects our energy field, but how am I contributing to my anxiety? What am I doing? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to watch the stock market anymore. I'm turning off CNBC and I'm going to turn off the news. And my anxiety went away. I was like, oh, that was great. I'm off of social, except for I do post business, of course, for my business pages, but I'm taking care of myself. I take a lot of baths at night. I put my salt in the bath. I have to practice radical self-care. So that's because that keeps me connected to myself, into my intuition, into my higher self. That's where I want to live. And all of those things were disconnecting me from that. And it's my job to stay in my adult connected into myself. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Can I probe this a little bit deeper though?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
there's so I can imagine someone who's saying, well, isn't that just like leaning into privilege and escapism? And even though, yeah, like I feel better, but aren't I supposed to be involved? Aren't I supposed to be making the world a better place and doing everything that I can for that? And that's a legitimate part of this person's values. And
Mhm.
but it's clearly not making them it's clearly continuing to make them anxious. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad that you asked it. It is such a personal preference. So let me tell you, I remember when I was living in Nashville at the time and earlier this past year, and I remember all that came out, let's say about Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, how do I feel about that? Should I go march? Should I not go march? I really want to contribute to this cause. That's just how I felt. I believe in this. And I had the thought, do I not feel like it in that way, but how do I feel, intuitively speaking, to go down and be in a large group of people marching? And I got very contracted, not because I didn't want to go, but because it's something inside of me didn't line up properly with it. So I said, I'm going to honor that. I have to honor where I am because I really believe we're all connected to something bigger than who we are. And I honor it. And if I'm really clear and I'm connected to myself, I let my internal guidance guide me no matter what with every single thing that I do. So I would have now, some people said, I went and marched. It was wonderful, or I don't believe in marching. And that's fine too. There isn't a right or a wrong way.
It sounds like you were really tuned into your nervous system and made a call based on what didn't feel good to you. Now that I'm sure didn't preclude you from doing something like writing a check to an organization or writing a letter or like
Exactly. I
being able
did.
to plug
Yes.
in a way that does feel like it's in alignment and isn't going to derail you.
Exactly. And that's what this is the thing. I only know what my nervous system is all about. I only know what my where my intuition is guiding me. Yes, I did all of those things. I donated money. I did all of that kind of thing. I posted some things on my business social about it. So That's what I did. That felt right for me. I'm an empath. I pick up on everyone's energy that is
Yeah.
around me. I don't care if you're in person or if you're far away. So I have to be really, really careful that I'm again practicing radical self-care. So I do what I can. And if someone's going to judge me, that's not my problem. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that in any other way than I have to take care of myself. And I would say that to anyone that listens to me. You have to take care of yourselves. And if you're doing something that feels off, then you are out of alignment with your higher self, with your own internal guidance system. We have to stay connected to that. That's the most important thing.
I love that what you're saying. I spend a lot of time and energy trying to talk people into the belief that self-care is not selfish, but actually really essential for us to truly
Mm-hmm.
be of service and to truly be present for the people in our lives and also for our health and happiness. But for the people who still need help with buying into this, right? Because I know that we
Yes.
have people who really believe like, but isn't being totally selfless a laudable goal? So like maybe we bring this back to the realm of the interpersonal. Like if somebody in my family needs me, why shouldn't I do everything possible, even if it's exhausting to me personally? Why shouldn't I do that? Why is there a negative consequence to me being completely selfless?
Because we have to remember that we're all souls here. This is my perspective again. I never
Mhm.
put it on anyone else, but that's
Yeah.
my belief. We're all souls here. We're all here to learn and grow and transform. And when it feels out of alignment for me to help someone, and again, if someone in my family needs me, I am there for them. However, if that person, whether it's friend or family, continues to pull, to pull, to pull, to pull on me, at some point, I may be there, but I'm going to stop offering because they're not taking. And at some point, I'm going to put more boundaries and say, you know what, I can only talk to you once this whole week because that soul needs to learn, grow, and transform. And I might be in the way of that happening. Again, I really live from my internal navigation system. If it feels like I need to go and meet with someone, then I will. If it doesn't, then I don't. Selfish is very different. Selfish is like I'm at a party and I ate all the brownies before anyone else ate the brownies. I am not making choices not to do things for other people because I don't feel like it, or I'd rather watch a movie at home than go visit with my cousin who's in a bad place today. I'm doing it because when I feel from my heart going to visit with her and my heart shuts down, I sit with it. I sit and I ask, is it in my highest good to do this? Is it beneficial for her if I go? And if my whole body starts to contract, I honor that. I honor that. I mean, we are all connected to something bigger than who we are, who we think we are, this physical body. And I let that guide me with every single thing that I do. So that's being in alignment with your higher self, with your heart, with your body, all of it. I don't know if that answers you, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's beautiful. And it comes back to reinforcing that staying connected to our bodies, staying connected to our internal experience, it really can lead to right action. And the fact that like absolutely the other people that we are in relationship with, that we can be in patterns with them that aren't necessarily healthy, and that by changing what we do and our action, we may be actually freeing someone up from that particular groove in order to be able to choose another path for themselves that might be allow them to be more in their adults.
yes. What if by me continuing to show up and quote unquote fix and our codependency can get in the way of this. I speak from a lot of experience on this one. What I have found is the more I healed and transformed my codependency, the more I learned boundaries. And guess what? The people around me that I thought I was quote unquote fixing had to then learn how to do it for themselves. And in the long run, they healed themselves. They went and got therapy. They went and got coaching. They went and got help because I wasn't there. And when I was with them, it was like we were both on a hamster wheel. So we have to remember that. Like sometimes when we're thinking that we're doing something good because we keep showing up for that person, perhaps they need a boundary so they can then get a reflection of what's going on in their own lives. And then they make the decision to work on themselves. Oftentimes we keep people stuck by sticking around, by talking to them hours a day. When they talk about the same old thing, it's like beating a dead horse over and over and over again. They're not going to change. They're not going to change until they decide to change. And in order to help someone else change, the dance has to change. So if I'm doing the waltz with you every single day and I'm calling you and I'm quote unquote helping you and it's not helping, I might then need to start doing the cha-cha with you, let's say. Then I'm going to do a new dance, meaning I'm not going to call every day. I'm going to call every other day. I'm going to call every 3 days. If they then have the opportunity to dance with me or not, or go find a new partner or decide to work on themselves.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Michelle, I feel like I could talk to you all day long about so many different things. There's so much juicy depth that we could potentially be exploring, but we are both busy people. So if people want to learn more, I will certainly have links in the show notes, but where would you have them go?
Oh my gosh, just go to theadultchair.com. That's everything. We've got the podcast. Again, I have a lot of free offerings because, again, I know that life can be really hard. So I've got a really beautiful inner child resource. I think that's the foundation for so much of our healing. So I have an inner child resource that has meditations and journaling prompts and guidance there. I've got the 14-day journaling prompts, like I mentioned. I've got the podcast. I've got, 20 some meditations. I have a membership site that really takes people on a deep dive every single month into their own adult chair, and it really provides a lot of healing. We have a coaching certification. We're doing round 2 in the spring and workshops and all kinds of stuff. But so that's just at theadultchair.com. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram at Michelle Chalfant, and I've got a lot of different Facebook accounts. I've got Michelle Chalfant Facebook, and we have the Adult Chair closed Facebook group that really, again, is a place for people that want to do deeper work within themselves and it's really just a beautiful, supportive community that now actually we're taking in person. We're launching that in 2021. We're doing what we're calling the Adult Chair gatherings, TAC gatherings. So all over the world, we're going to have in-person gatherings where people then can practice the adult chair with others and learn more about it and really learn and practice how to be healthy adults. So we're really, really excited about that.
Gathering in person. Yeah, what a concept.
Well, in the beginning, we're going to be on Zoom. Okay.
No,
but
course,
we're hoping by April, we're going to be in person. But yeah,
really
Zoom.
exciting stuff. And I love what you're doing. And people do need to stay connected to other people. Because and especially cultures and groups that help us take better care of ourselves and to live the lives that we want to be living, because unfortunately doing this work on ourselves is not necessarily the norm. So thank you so much for providing so many wonderful resources for folks and for being willing to have this conversation with me today.
I appreciate you so much for having me. This was really, really fun. Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.